All right, now we are merely a few hours away from the first votes being cast in Canada's 43rd general election, and it looks like for sitting Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, it's gloves off in a fight to stay in power. The people working on Trudeau's campaign have said that the Prime Minister has dumped his teleprompter in a bid to connect more directly with the people. Just this weekend, he spoke about his father and former Prime Minister Perry Trudeau, calling him an absolute fighter, something that he's refrained from doing so far. And most opinion polls have predicted a stalemate in Canada. In the 338-member Assembly, neither Trudeau's Liberals nor Andrew Scheer's Conservatives are expected to win a majority. But this was not the case just a couple of months back. Trudeau was firmly on his way to coming back to power before his campaign was hit by a number of scandals, the blackface scandal being the most prominent one. Now, Trudeau's campaign is focused on issues such as climate change, building a strong middle class and stringent gun control, policies that have come to define him in his first term. But Trudeau has fallen short when it comes to implementing the policies, especially on climate change. Now, Canada lags behind on its Paris Climate Accord commitments. Trudeau has also championed the rights of the LGBTQ community and has pushed for gender equality in Canada. Now, Andrew Scheer's Conservatives are also fighting for a platform for more jobs and strengthening the middle class. But his stance on same-sex marriages and abortion continues to be pretty regressive. So the question, of course, is what happens in the event of an electoral stalemate in Canada? Now, as per precedent, if there is a deadlock, the sitting Prime Minister gets the first chance to form the government. This means that even if Trudeau's Liberals end up with lesser seats than the Conservatives, the Prime Minister will be called in first to get the first crack at forming a government. Now, on an average, minority governments in Canada last for almost about 2.5 years. All right, let's now shift our attention to what is happening in northeastern Syria. Even though there is an active ceasefire in place, the Kurds and the Turkish forces are reported to be exchanging fire since yesterday. And now there are more troubling reports that have emerged suggesting that Turkey might have done the unthinkable. They could have used the prohibited incendiary weapons in their offensive against the Kurds. Now, a video of a young Kurdish boy with burnt skin has been doing the rounds on Twitter, widely being shared, especially on the pro-Kurdish handles. The video is apparently taken at a hospital in Tal Tamer, near the Ras Al-Ain border city, which has been at the focus of the fighting in northern Syria. Now, in the video, the boy can be seen screaming in excruciating pain and pleading with his father to stop the burning. Now, as per international media reports and chemical weapons experts, the culprit in this case could well be white phosphorus, an incendiary weapon causing serious and exceptionally painful burns on the skin. White phosphorus is routinely held by militaries and is used as a smoke screen in daytime and as an incendiary tool to light up areas during the night. Now, its use on humans, however, was banned under the United Nations Convention on Certain Chemical Weapons by various signatories in 1997. Now, the United Nations and also the Organization of Prohibition of Chemical Weapons has said that they are gathering information on the accusations and are presently investigating the use of the banned chemical weapons that may have taken place. Now, there are no expert teams on the ground to verify the chemical attack yet, but some clarity on this issue could be expected in the coming few days. Now, the Kurdish forces have accused Turkey of deploying incendiary weapons like white phosphorus and napalm in its offensive. Now, Turkey has denied the charge, saying that there are no such weapons in the inventory of the Turkish armed forces. Now, this is also not the first instance where toxic chemical or incendiary weapons might have been used in Syria. Remember, in April 2017, in Khan Sheikhoun town in Syria had been attacked with chemical weapons. The release of a toxic gas, including sarin, a nerve agent, had left at least about 89 people dead and over 550 others injured. The attack had been attributed to the Bashar al-Assad-led Syrian government by the international community. The Syrian government had denied the charge, while Russia had come out in its support. Meanwhile, Hillary Clinton has posted a parody letter mocking the US president's letter to the Turkish president on the offensive in Syria. The letter was supposedly written by John F. Kennedy, or at least that is what it purports to be, back in the year 1962, at the height of the Cuban Missile Crisis. It was addressed to the Premier of the Soviet Union, Nikita Khrushchev, and urged him to get his missiles out of Cuba. And it uses language that was very similar to the kind that was used by Donald Trump in his letter to the Turkish president. The letter says, and I quote here, "Everybody will call your garbage country the Soviet Bunyan." It mocks what Trump said to the Turkish president, "Don't be a fool and don't let the world down." Both the American presidents had written the letters over a similar problem. Kennedy had written to Khrushchev over Soviet Union's offensive in Cuba, and Trump had written to Erdogan to reconsider his decision to invade Syria on the 9th of October. The difference, of course, is the language of both the letters. While Kennedy's letter at the time when the Soviet Union had moved their missiles into Cuba reflected what Americans described as diplomacy, Trump's letter seems to have rewritten the rules of diplomatic communication between two world leaders. Trump's letter broke the internet. The White House released this letter to prove that Donald Trump had not given the green signal to Turkey. Ever since, thousands of parody letters have made an appearance on the internet, and Hillary's tweet is just one of them. Now, proof checkers also had worked overtime to prove that Trump's letter for stating that it may not be a real one. They had several reasons to say this. The letter that was written by Donald Trump, believe it or not, did not have a single spelling mistake, quite unlike the letters that we've seen from the US president. Meanwhile, protests have swelled across Lebanon for the fourth straight night. It was the biggest night of protests so far. Fireworks and flares lit up Beirut's sky, and protesters danced and also played patriotic songs. Now, the protesters also formed human chains and chanted that their leaders should be ousted. They showed no signs of abating whatsoever. Now, during the day, tens of thousands of people thronged the central district, which includes the Al Amin Mosque and a street leading to government headquarters. The loudspeakers blared music as the crowds kept pouring onto the streets. They also carried the Lebanese flags and blocked the roads nationwide. Now, the central demand of the protesters is to end rampant corruption. The Lebanese Prime Minister Saad al-Hariri has now agreed on a package of reforms with the government partners to ease an economic crisis that has sparked the protests. The details of the reforms are yet to be made public. Now, Lebanon is facing an acute deficit crisis coupled with stagnant growth and also a crumbling infrastructure. Now, the government has proposed taxes on tobacco, fuel and even WhatsApp calls, the last one being the most unpopular move. After sustained protests, the government was forced to retract on its decision to tax WhatsApp. Now, earlier this year, the government had also passed a belt-tightening budget which had given citizens a bit of a bitter pill. The measures were aimed at securing an $11 billion aid package from international donors, and these measures are set to come into effect in the country's budget for the year 2020.